CURES is sponsored by Wheeler Health's Better Choice program. More at wheelerhealth.org.
Helping you lead a healthier life. This is CURES.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the CURES Show, where we explore cutting-edge wellness from credible sources. I'm Kara Sundlin, and now we're diving into one of the most talked-about topics in health and wellness right now, and that, of course, is the GLP-1 medications. I'm very excited to be joined by Dr. Brook Seely, who is the founder of Connecticut Facial Plastic Surgery, also the medical director of the Med Spa at Connecticut Facial Plastic Surgery, and an expert, Cleveland Clinic trained in GLP-1 medications. Thank you so much, Doctor, for being with us.
Thank you for having me. It's great.
Yeah, this is something that, let me ask you first, why did you decide to get into GLP-1s? I know that you're double board certified in plastics and in wellness. And as this trend started to come out, what made you decide to start doing this for your patients?
Sure. Well, actually, my double board certification is facial plastic surgery and otolaryngology head and neck surgery.
Oh.
So just to be clear,
okay.
not misrepresent. But yeah, so part of our practice is the aesthetics, right? The facial plastic surgery. So we've had a lot of patients over the years coming in with all sorts of different facial plastic concerns. A lot of them focus on their neck. Some of them are looser skin, older age kind of patients looking for a lift, but a decent number of them are neck heaviness and fullness. And so we do liposuction and other treatments in the neck, and we were seeing more and more patients who are coming in with questions about stuff like that. And as these medications became available, we were looking at it actually at a meeting. My wife and I were out at a conference in California where I had done my fellowship with one of my mentors out there, and one of the speakers was an expert on these GLP-1 medications, and they were talking about, we have seen so many patients who have come in for, and they're also doing body surgery, but they were looking to lose fullness in certain areas, and they added the GLP-1s to what they were doing surgically, and the results were just that much better. So we sort of started from that angle, and then everything's just taken off.
Let's just back up for a moment, because people might be going, okay, I've heard of these GLP-1s. Most of us even know someone who's taking them right now. But what exactly is it? Why is it helping us lose weight?
So a GLP-1 is a hormone. So it's a hormone that is naturally made in the human body. It's released by your stomach, and it circulates throughout your body. And there are receptors on virtually every cell in your body that respond to it in different ways. So a lot of the common things it does is going to help your metabolism, and in particular your insulin and sugar regulation. So when you eat food and there's this boost of sugar in your system, your body wants to release glucose. Your cells want to uptake some of that. Some people have insulin resistance because their cells aren't responding as well. So we want to have GLP-1. GLP-1 in your system, maybe you're not releasing enough of it. Or also it's just being metabolized a little bit fast, or it's not being received well by your cells. So that's kind of what it is, and what in a nutshell has happened is they found a way to manufacture it in such a way that it has a much more stable half-life, so it doesn't get broken down in your body, and you can inject someone with a once-a-week shot, and it sort of keeps them in that state where they're having a much better what they call homeostasis, so their sugars aren't going wild and their insulin's not going wild. It's just a much more regular feeling, so it takes away that craving and those ups and downs.
I want to show your before and after picture, because I think it's interesting that not only are you a doctor helping many, many patients, but you decided to do the GLP-1 drugs yourself. How much weight have you lost?
I am down 60 and holding.
60 and holding. And which one are you on?
So I am on tirzepatide. So tirzepatide is it's a joint agonist, so it blocks both the GLP-1s as well as GIP. So it's really two hormones in one.
Okay. And so let's even start there. If you've heard of Ozempic and you've heard of Mounjaro, or you've heard of some of these brand names, what you're using in your practice are the base ingredients of that, the peptides, either tirzepatide or semaglutide.
Exactly, yeah. So you can purchase the branded drugs in different ways. So if you're buying Ozempic, specifically brand name Ozempic, you're buying it for diabetes. The same company makes a drug called Wegovy, which you use for overweight or obesity. What's in that and what is doing the work for you is semaglutide. Similarly, a different company makes Mounjaro, which is used for diabetes, and Zepbound, which is used for overweight and obesity, and the active ingredient in that is tirzepatide. So you can buy the active ingredient in different formulations as well.
So basically it means that you're getting the base ingredients. It's not those brand name drugs. It's coming from a compounding pharmacy, and you're finding that this is how you're treating most of the patients. It's working for just weight loss, and it makes it less expensive?
Right, and so there are some hoops with all of that, right? So when you compounding pharmacies are certainly legal, and they're sort of a tried and true part of our society. But there are also people, whenever there's a loophole, that might want to exploit it. So they're pretty regulated. So it is pretty important, if you're going to go that route, that you do your homework and you find the right place to get it, and you buy it from a trusted provider, and that it's overseen. You're not just buying it and using it the way you would buy any other prescription drug and use it. You should do it under the guidance of a healthcare professional. But yeah, with those sort of auspices in place, we can do that.
Yeah, because right now, I mean, there's a lot of women. I mean, we're all talking about this, and maybe men too. But if you happen to be over 40 and you're looking on Instagram, you are being marketed all the time to get GLP-1s on, really easy breezy, get them on these other big name websites, HERS, or all these things. All these companies have popped up saying, even companies that used to just do weight loss like Noom are now adding a GLP-1 component. And whether they be a recognized company or just these random things where like you can get it and get easy access, does that mean that all these people are compounding?
So yeah, basically anyone who is not literally Novo Nordisk or Eli Lilly, which are the two big pharma companies making the two branded drugs, everybody else is doing some form of compounding. The issue is whether or not you trust the source and whether or not it is being properly overseen by an appropriate medical professional. And those are, I think, where people might get into a little bit of trouble.
Yeah, because these are drugs that, like any drug, we really want to know. I think all of us who have struggled or want to lose weight would love to lose weight, but you don't want these lifelong side effects that I think some people are scared of. What's going to happen to me? Or do I have to stay on this for the rest of my life? Let's start with the source. If you just get something online and you don't know, and it seems like, oh, wow, it's so affordable. I'm going to pay a couple $100 a month, $300 a month, whatever. I mean, you see those advertised. You want people to be wary of that? Why?
Well, I would say to a large extent, it's kind of buyer beware. Whenever you hear something that sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So then the question is, well, why is that? Is it the medication itself is not exactly what it's being advertised as, or is it that you're just getting it from sort of a wholesale, mass producer without any professional oversight or regulation on, what you're actually getting? So that's where I think we come in and give people that patient-doctor relationship. We have two doctors in the office, and myself and my wife are in practice together. So everything that goes out is a prescription from us to a known source that's been third-party tested. So we know what we're getting. We know what dose we're getting. We show patients how to use it. We are in touch with them on a weekly basis to check side effects and how they're responding. We have them looking at all of their different parameters, including obviously weight, but even more important, metabolism, fat, muscle content, things like that. And those are, I think, the things where maybe you can get into some trouble if you don't do those things.
Yeah, so talk about the protocol at your office. What is so important that people do this the right way? I know that Scott Haney is very open that you're his doctor. He's lost about 50 pounds. And as someone who works with him closely every day, I do notice he's not hungry as often. And he is, though, he said, under the guidance of you, he has to make sure he's working out and eating a lot of protein.
Yeah, so we have certain sort of benchmarks that we want to hit. So protein is probably first and foremost, if you're looking at the most important things you can do other than the medication itself to be successful on it. Eating enough protein, doing resistance training, getting appropriate sleep. Those are really, really big.
Okay.
So starting with the protein, there's a lot of discrepancy if you talk to enough providers and fitness trainers and Instagrammers and everybody else as to how much protein you should get. But I think virtually everyone will agree that the RDA of protein that was put out decades ago is inadequate for most of us, and certainly inadequate for anyone who is in a weight loss condition. If you're in a weight loss state, you really want to protect every bit of muscle that you have. And the way to do that is to get extra protein and do resistance training. So we're telling patients targeting a gram of protein per day for every pound of their target body weight. So if you want to be...
Target weight. So if you want to be 125 pounds and you're 150 pounds, you could just try to get the 125 grams.
Yeah, and similarly, if you're only 100 and you want to get to 125, what are you going to have to do? You're going to have to bulk up. So it's a reasonable thought to think of it as a target weight. But then, tell somebody they need to get 180 grams of protein.
For a man, that's a lot.
That's a lot of protein. That's not going to happen accidentally. So you have to kind of be focused on it and think about where is this coming from and eating it throughout the day. You can't just wait till dinner and slam 150 grams of protein. So you got to be a little bit deliberate about it. And then what are you going to do with that protein? You have to do the legwork, right? So
Literally the legwork.
Scott will tell you how much he hates kettlebells. We all have our things. And, we go to the gym. My wife and I are at the gym, several times a week, and there's lots of people doing heavy ropes and other people doing weights and other people doing body pump classes. And it doesn't matter so much what you do as long as you do something. Regular resistance training, 45 minutes to an hour, 3 times a week, I would say is a good benchmark. If you can do more, that's great, but that will get you there probably.
So for people who are just going and getting them and not doing any of that, is that dangerous?
It is dangerous because you put yourself in a weight loss state. And if you lose weight, you're going to lose fat, but you're also going to lose muscle. And so if you're not doing something to protect that muscle, you might lose more muscle than you want to lose. So you can develop a relative sarcopenia, which is a lack of muscle. As we age, that is devastating. So the most important thing you can do as you age is probably maintain, your balance, your fitness, your muscle, so that you don't end up weak and, in a wheelchair somewhere playing bingo when you really could have been out there hiking and biking with your grandkids.
Yeah,
so that's really the goal,
my mom
right?
is 80, but she's in a walker. She always had the skinniest little legs, and then, she never did GLP-1s, but I think of that, mothers, grandmothers, they didn't do a lot of strength training. And I think a lot of the women in my generation are thinking, I don't want to end up like that. But especially if you're taking a GLP-1, it's that much more important. You're really setting yourself up for some major long-term problems if you don't do those things.
Yes, and it's not the GLP-1, it's just the weight loss.
So
if you're losing weight in any way, if you're losing weight on a diet, if you're going, pick a diet, a fad, whatever fad diet you like, a soup diet or some such thing, or just even a good diet, like a Weight Watchers program or something that's very well intentioned. If you're not getting enough protein, you're not doing enough resistance training, you are losing weight. You're also losing muscle.
Okay. So let's say we come to you and we say, all right, I only want to lose, I know you've done bigger numbers, like you did the 60 pounds and Scott is on 50 pounds. There's a lot of women out there, and it's all over social media, of saying, just taking these they reached, in those above 40 years where it's really hard to lose weight, hormones are changing, and maybe they're losing 5, putting on 5, losing 5. They've tried protein, they're trying working out, and they don't seem like it's moving. So I just want to go on this and lose those 20 pounds that I've gained past 40 or something. Yeah. Is that a good idea, and can you use them for those?
It can be a very good idea. I think everybody needs to get kind of checked out individually. So, for example, if someone comes to us with that scenario, we're going to run some labs. We're going to have a meet and greet, a consultation. We're going to see if there's something else that might be at play. Is their thyroid off? Do they have any other sort of metabolic issues going on that we could be missing? Because certainly other things do come into play. But let's say the labs are good, the health is good, like you said, everything is good except we got that 20, 30 pounds, whatever it is, then they can be really helpful because they curb that food noise. They curb that sort of habitual eating, grabbing a snack when you're heading into the car, walking by the break room and someone puts some cookies out and you got to grab 2. You order pizza and you have 3 slices instead of 1. All those sort of little extras that add up to that extra 10, 20, 30 pounds can be made very easy by, stimulating those receptors.
Okay, so really the way it's helping you is you just don't have the desire to eat as much.
That's a lot of it. Yeah,
okay.
It does help you more efficiently regulate your food in terms of your sugar and your insulin, but it also makes you make better choices. People tend to have less desire to eat a bag of Cheetos. You still might like a couple Cheetos. I love Cheetos. They're great. But, I'm not going to sit there and eat a whole bunch of them. But there's no food you can't eat, but you're just going to feel less bingy, less sort of, that food noise thing is a very powerful thing for a lot of people. So
we're going to talk about some of the benefits, too, that you're seeing. But let's just say, so your hunger has been curbed. Are they doing other things that help you lose weight? Because people are sometimes on a strict diet, and they're like, I'm actually not cheating, and I am trying to do all the right things, and I'm still not really budging. Are they helping in another way, like speeding up your metabolism or doing something?
Maybe not. We sort of a lot of this we don't know.
Okay.
A lot of this we're learning every day. I get things in my inbox and my email virtually every day about, hey, this new benefit that came in. Here's another study. Here's another study. A lot of those studies right now are what we call correlative studies. So they take a whole bunch of people on the medication and they look at group A versus another group that is not on the medication, and they kind of compare how they're doing with respect to something. And they say, well, this group had a lot less of this behavior, a lot less of this disease. Then they have to go do this study where they take a bunch of subjects and give some of them the drug and some of them the placebo and see how it plays out, prospectively.
Yes.
So that means there's a lot of great indicative data out there, but there's not all of the hard science that we need to make bold claims. So the things that we know we can make bold claims about are much better control of obesity and insulin resistance, much better control of actually coronary disease, so cardiac death, so heart attack, strokes, high cholesterol, especially in the setting of people who have diabetes, sleep apnea, obviously weight, and there are about 13 different types of cancers that are associated with obesity. More and more coming out on how these are having interplay with each of those, but if you're decreasing all of the things that are decreasing the obesity, you're going to decrease all the things that go with the obesity too. So that's a lot. Now there's a lot of other things that are being studied, like addictive behaviors, because this goes to that sort of GLP-1 receptor in the brain, and it says, hey, that pleasure center, you don't keep going for that cookie. Well, also maybe you don't keep going for that cigarette, or you don't keep going for that alcohol, or you don't keep going for that slot machine lever, or all of those different vices. So
I have had friends say they just don't want to drink.
Yeah, there's a pleasure center in your brain that's kind of toned down. It doesn't mean you're not going to have fun in life, but some of those things that are addictive pleasures, it seems to tone them down too. And then big picture things like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, polycystic ovary disease, and inflammation everywhere. Inflammation of your joints, inflammation diseases like psoriasis. So many different things have been shown that if you're taking GLP-1s, they get better.
Okay.
But it's a question of what dose do we need to get this particular impact? If we know the dose we need for diabetes, we know the dose we need for weight. What dose exactly do you need for Parkinson's? We don't know that yet. So that's where a bit of the gray area comes in.
Yeah. I want to dig in even deeper. We're going to take a quick moment and get a message from one of our sponsors, but coming back to talk about some of these big benefits that you're seeing in your practice.
Struggling with gambling? Wheeler Health's Better Choice program offers personalized support and treatment to help you regain control. Visit WheelerHealth.org to learn more and take the first step towards recovery today.
All right, we are back with Dr. Brook Seely. We are talking about what everyone wants to know more about, it seems like, is GLP-1s. And I'll tell you, I have a friend who has PCOS. She's 50. She really was, doing every workout, eating healthy, and just felt like she was still struggling with her weight. Like it would go down and it would go up even more, and it would this and with that. And sat on this medication for so long because she was like, I don't want to take it. I don't want to be not natural, or I don't want to have a problem. Like, what if I shouldn't take a drug? And then she's finally doing it and has noticed that she's dropping weight. So for those who are thinking, well, why do I need this? I don't need this. I can do GLP-1 naturally, or I can get over this weight loss hurdle. Do you agree with that? Or do you think that there's something that inherently that we get to a certain point and some people are just, they're not moving the needle no matter what they're doing that much?
I think for a lot of us, that's the thing. You get to a point where you're not moving the needle. Women, you bring it up, with the perimenopausal, there is a change in your body's composition and your hormones. Cortisol levels change, all of the estrogen, testosterone imbalance is thrown off a little bit. And so people tend to have a little more difficulty even if they didn't have difficulty before. And for them, this can make a big difference. So.
Now, let's just say your wife, who's been a lifelong athlete, she does not do this, and she has stayed. She's one of those people that we envy, right?
Right. She's one of those people that obviously exercises a lot. She's somebody who, she's in the gym pretty regularly, many classes a week. So that's something that's always been a part of her life. And again, you get away from it sometimes when you have kids and you have jobs and you have other stuff, and maybe you go up and down a little bit too. But, people like that have found that when they're on it, they're on it. She also happens to love high-protein foods, so that's a nice thing to love. If you love chocolate chip cookies more, you might be in a little bit more trouble.
Okay. Yeah, so is there something, you talk about insulin resistance, and your regular doc doesn't test for that. I have had my scores tested because I also see, thanks to CURES, I see some naturopathic doctors who said, you don't have diabetes, you don't have any of these other things, but your insulin resistance score shows you're pretty resistant, like you're pretty carb intolerant. What is insulin resistance, and how come we don't know if we have it?
Yeah, it's a good question, and in fairness, we don't test for it either. This is one of these things that if you really felt like you had an insulin resistance, you're probably going to need to see an endocrinologist who specializes in that, or a naturopath who has taken a lot of training and has a lot of time to focus on that. What tends to happen is your primary doctor, if you're going to see a more typical, internal medicine doctor, they are inundated with what they're inundated with, right? So they have a vast majority of their patients have 15,000 other problems, and they don't necessarily have the time to hit on everything.
Yeah.
So you almost need like a specialist in that area. Flashback to when I was in medical school. They just had our 30th reunion recently. GLPs didn't exist.
Yeah.
So they didn't teach you this because nobody knew it. It's been around now for 20 years, but it's really become more popular in the last 5 to 10. Yeah. So this is something that a lot of people, even if they want to help you with, they may not be able to because they may not know it. So it is important, if you're thinking along those lines, maybe get involved with somebody who has that degree of specialty training.
Well, but or these medications are helping people who are not technically obese, right?
Correct.
So you may not be able to get your insurance covered, although again, this is why you're doing it with a compounding way. It does tend to be less expensive. It's not free, so it is an investment. But I guess what I'm getting at is there something inherently going on that we're just not some people aren't fixing on their own, so they just need this help?
Yeah, there is. And I think a lot of all of these things are based on inflammation. I think one of the biggest things that goes on in the body that causes all kinds of havoc as life goes on is inflammation. Most cancers, your joint disease, your skin conditions, there's so many different parts of the body, heart disease, vascular disease. It all can be tracked to, in some components, inflammation. So these are very powerful anti-inflammatories. And I think for that reason, it's helping a lot of different things. We just are trying to figure out the best way to use it for each particular indication right now. But we are finding that at the dose that people use it for weight loss, it's knocking out a whole bunch of other things as well. So potentially we'll be able to use it at lower doses and as life goes on, but we don't necessarily know all of that right yet.
So weight loss dose, you like to start, if people are going to do this, what should they know about starting on a dose? And again, people can go to you here in Connecticut, but how do you start this? What's your word of wisdom, your caution?
Our caution is slow and low wins the game, right? Slow and steady wins the race. Slow and low is the way to go with this medication. So there's 2 drugs, they have different dosing. They're not apples and apples. You got apples and oranges. So semaglutide, you might start off at like a 0.25 milligrams, and tirzepatide, you might be 2.5 milligrams, for example. Those are kind of typical starting areas, about a 10-to-1 ratio. We start people on a dose, and we have them do it for 4 weeks or 8 weeks. So these are once-a-week injections. And we follow them. And some people, the next day, they feel better. They can immediately say that I have lost, some of this drive to eat all the time. I just feel so much more at peace. I want to go to the gym and work out. Like things that they haven't done for a while, they're feeling better. Other people, they're not feeling it yet. They probably need a little bit more. So they watch the scale, and the scale is important, but there's far more important things than the weight number on this scale. So we're watching other things as well, fat percentage and muscle percentage.
You're getting on a special scale, and it's showing, are you losing fat or are you losing muscle?
Exactly, yeah. We're not going to, a regular scale is going to give you the overall number, but what's in that?
Yeah.
And there are very scientific and more elaborate ways to figure that all out, but they can be a little bit more involved, a little more expensive. You can actually get a really good thumbnail sketch on a scale that we give to all of our patients. You can buy one yourself on Amazon, for
I have
$50
one by
or so. Renfro is a very good one.
Okay.
Yeah, and you just, as long as you're consistent and you do it, the same time of day with the same amount of lack of clothing on and so on, you can get comparison numbers and follow yourself over time.
Gives you a little score of like how much of you is fat, how much of you is this.
Exactly, and you can get a real percentage, and while that number might be off by a few percent compared to if you did an MRI, at least you're pretty close, and you know your number compared to your number a month ago, and that's what really matters.
What are the most common side effects, and can you mitigate them? And are there long-term safety concerns? Because I know some people are saying that I worry that I'm going to have to stay on this my whole life.
Yeah. So in terms of side effects, the most common things are going to be GI. So this is a GI modulating drug. It's going to change your gastrointestinal system. So if you take everything you've been eating and doing and it's going a certain way and you just change it and you slow down how fast food is going through your stomach, you can imagine, depending on your body's response to that, you might get a little bloating or constipation or nausea. In a more extreme case, vomiting or diarrhea or something like that. tend not to see those very often, provided you go very low and slow on your dosing. They're all generally manageable. If someone tries them and they get a little nauseous on this dose, usually it's kind of that introduction to it. The next time around, even the same dose, they're not going to get it, or maybe after 2 times. It's just something that they kind of get used to, and it goes away. So in general, we haven't seen much of that where it was quote unquote meaningful. And the positive benefits are so much that people are willing to just kind of get through those day or two of, maybe I have a little extra ginger ale or I eat some blander diet for a day and then it goes away. Long term, that's not been an issue with any of our patients.
Okay.
Big things that you worry about, when you read about these things in the news, right? When somebody says, "Oh, my stomach completely stopped moving, I ended up in the emergency room," or "I got pancreatitis,"
Yes,
or "I got gallstones," or things like that. They do happen. They tend to happen, and knock on wood here, I haven't seen them happen in our patients, but they do happen in the literature, and they're like sub 1% typically in terms of how often they happen, and they tend to happen in people on higher doses, on higher, more rapid escalations.
Okay.
So those are things that we worry about and we go through with patients. Watch out for this, but that's why we're saying stay well hydrated, eat right. Probably a bigger thing long term is going to be the muscle loss. We want to make sure that we don't. That would be a side effect
protein,
to avoid.
Working out, water.
In
our last, minute and a half or so, gosh, I could talk to you so much more. And I want to encourage. I'll put some of this on social media. If you have more questions, we can have Dr. Brook Seely back. I know people can see you. Let me just show where people can get in touch with you, because you are here in Connecticut and you have a med spa actually that you're just opening in Wethersfield. But ctfacialplasticsurgery.com. Instagram is Dr. Brook Seely. Facebook CT Facial Plastic Surgery, so much more of this. But I just want you to show folks, because before we run out of time, you brought it with you, because people are wondering, what's it like? You get to leave the office with one of those, and you kind of can do this by yourself after you've been taught.
Yeah, so this is a dummy, if you will. This is just a sterile vial with sterile water in it, but that is what 1 milliliters of liquid looks like in this.
Okay.
And that is a typical amount that a patient might get, especially as a starting dose, so I don't know if that is visible there.
Yep.
And then we use these little syringes. The syringes hold 1 ml, and they come with a prefused needle, so you don't have to worry about putting the needle on. We show the patients how to draw it up. A typical dose to start here, let's say you're doing tirzepatide, would be something like that. So it's not very much.
Yeah.
We show them how to do this sterilely. Typically, you're injecting this into fat, so most people are putting it somewhere around the midsection, although you could put it in a leg or an arm or somewhere, anywhere where you have fat. It's just mechanically easier to do it there. And it's a once-a-week shot. So once you learn how to do it and you get over the thought that, hey, I have to put a needle in myself, it's over in like 2 seconds. I mean, plenty of people do it all day, all the time with diabetes and various other medications that they're taking. So it's pretty quick learn.
Yeah. So I know there's a lot more positive we could learn about this. Maybe we'll learn some negative stuff, but bottom line in your last minute with us, you want people to be aware that these could be really life-changing in all the good ways. You're on it yourself, but you also need to be aware how to do this correctly.
Yeah, I think that's a good take-home. I think that when we look back at this decade, we will see this as a landmark period in medicine, the way that we saw things like oral contraceptives come in, and the way that we have seen statin drugs come in and certain antibiotics where they changed everything we do. This has changed so much in such a short period of time. I have to imagine as we move forward, this is going to be something that really is a part of life for most of Americans once we get the costs and the logistics and some of the studies in place.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dr. Brook Seely, thank you so much for sharing your time with us. Everyone at home, fascinating conversation. Share this with someone you love. Have a great day, everyone, and be well.
CURES is sponsored by Wheeler Health's Better Choice program. More at wheelerhealth.org.